My fiancé Syed, help me or get out of the way. So I left, canceled the wedding, and exposed the truth when she tried to destroy me after I chose my dad over her survival mode. The moment she said it, I knew something had already tipped past repair. Not later, not after a talk. Right there, in my kitchen, with her keys still in her hand and that look on her face like I was just another task in her way. My fiancé said, I'm in survival mode. Either make yourself useful or stop slowing me down. I said, fine, I'm out. Before the night was over, the wedding spreadsheet was wiped from my computer, her clothes were sorted into boxes, and her sister was blowing up my phone saying Brooke had torched everything. For context, I'm Ethan, 34. Brooke is 31. We were together a little more than 3 years and engaged for 7 months. She'd been staying in my townhouse outside Nashville for almost a year. The mortgage was mine. The utility accounts were mine. Most of what was in that house was mine too, because I bought it long before she moved in. In the beginning, loving Brooke felt easy. She worked in event promotions and had that sleek, high-functioning charm that made people relax around her fast. She always seemed composed, even when she was selling chaos to other people as opportunity. I'm the opposite. I manage logistics for a medical distribution company. I live by calendars, lists, delivery windows, backup plans. I like details nailed down. I like knowing what something is before I commit to it. For a while it worked. She brought momentum. I brought steadiness. We met somewhere in the middle and called it balance. Then January hit. Her company lost a major client, and one phrase started swallowing everything. Survival mode. At first, I gave her room. Her commissions took a hit. Her supervisor was breathing down her neck. Every conversation sounded like she was one bad week away from losing her job. She'd come home wrung out, talking too fast, forgetting to eat, saying she felt like she was going under. So I adjusted. Quietly, I picked up more groceries, covered the bills without mentioning it, grabbed her dry cleaning, brought home takeout when she skipped meals, sat there when she cried and let her unload all of it. I thought I was helping her through a temporary stretch. What I missed was that survival mode had stopped being an explanation. It had become permission. If I asked what time she'd be back, she'd give me this irritated look and say, Ethan, I'm in survival mode. I don't need reporting rules right now. If I asked her not to leave coffee rings on the side table or half her makeup spread across the bathroom, she'd act like I was policing crumbs while she was trying to keep her head above water. If I started to talk about anything on my side, she'd cut it off so fast it made me feel stupid for bringing it up. The one that stayed with me happened when I told her my dad had a heart procedure scheduled in Louisville and I was worried. I wasn't asking her to fix anything. I just said I had a bad feeling and was trying not to spiral. She looked at me, completely unmoved, and said, I do not have room for your emotions too. I'm barely keeping it together myself. That was the point where something in me folded inward. After that, I started taking up less space in my own life. I stopped mentioning plans, stopped asking for updates, stopped expecting care to come back in my direction. It was easier to go quiet than to be reminded over and over that her stress counted as real and mine counted as extra weight. What never got smaller were her expectations. She still expected my house to function like hers, my weekends to be available, my car when hers needed repairs, my credit card when she had vendor lunches to cover and said she'd settle up later. Somehow survival mode always meant she could reach further into my life, my money, my time. It never once meant she should ask for less. It ended on a Thursday in April. My dad's follow-up got moved sooner, and my mom called asking if I could drive down with her Saturday because she didn't want to handle the trip alone. I told her yes right away. There wasn't even a decision to make. That night, Brooke came in already agitated. She dropped her bag by the entry bench and started venting before she'd even taken off her shoes. Her boss had dumped a last-minute charity brunch on her for Sunday, and now Saturday had to be spent pulling together centerpieces, supply tubs, vendor sheets, all of it. Then she looked at me and asked, "You're helping, right?" I told her I couldn't. I said I was going with my parents to Louisville and had already committed. She stared at me for a beat, then let out this short laugh that wasn't really laughter at all. "So your mom needs a driver and suddenly that matters more than everything on my plate?" I said, "It's my dad's cardiac follow-up, Brooke." Then she gave me the sentence that ended it. "I'm in survival mode, Ethan. Help me or get out of my way." No softness, no second thought, just that flat, absolute entitlement, like my role in her life had already been reduced to labor she could claim. I looked at her and whatever had been dragging out for months snapped clean. "Okay," I said, "I'm done." She frowned. "What?" "The engagement is over," I told her. "We're finished. Handle your crisis without me." That's when she got loud. "You cannot be serious. You're blowing up a wedding over one comment?" You always twist everything until it's about you. I didn't take the bait. I walked upstairs, pulled 2 empty suitcases from the closet, and started taking her clothes off the hangers. That changed her voice immediately. Ethan, stop. Ethan, you know that's not what I meant. Ethan, don't do this just because I'm under pressure. I kept folding. At one point, she started grabbing things back out of the case, so I handed her another one and said, "Take what you need tonight. I'll box up the rest tomorrow." Around 10:30, she stormed out, backed out too fast, and sent me one last text from the driveway. "Hope your family was worth wrecking your future over." I answered with one line. They were. Then I blocked her. That night, I shut down the wedding payments. We were going to lose the venue deposit, but that felt cheaper than marrying a woman who could hear my father's heart issue and somehow hear it as a challenge to her schedule. I canceled the florist meeting, put the honeymoon plans on hold, and stacked every bridal magazine she'd left scattered around my place into a box outside the study. Then I slept. 8 solid hours. No pacing, no second guessing, no replaying the argument in loops. Saturday, I drove to Louisville with my mom. My dad's appointment went all right. Not perfect, but better than I'd feared. On the drive back, my mom asked why Brooke hadn't called once, hadn't texted, hadn't checked in at all, so I told her. She went quiet after that, just looked ahead through the windshield for a while, hands folded in her lap. Then she said, very calmly, "Good thing she showed you now instead of after the wedding." And sitting there with that stillness in the car, I realized the ugliest part wasn't what she'd said. It was that somewhere in her mind, she probably still believed I'd come back and keep carrying her anyway. The relief didn't hit like grief. It hit like oxygen. That was the part I hadn't expected. Once it was over, I wasn't mourning a future. I was realizing how long I'd been holding my breath. Sunday night, Brooke's sister, Cassidy, came hammering on my front door hard enough to set off the camera alert before I even heard it in the house. I checked the feed first. Then I opened the inner door and kept the storm door locked between us. Cassidy came in already loaded for a fight. "Brooke made one bad comment and you detonated an entire engagement," I said. "She told me to either help her or get out of the way. I picked one." Cassidy threw her hands up and said Brooke was overwhelmed, buried, under pressure. Like any of that changed what had actually come out of her mouth. I told her my father had been on a cardiac monitor while Brooke was turning my family into an obstacle. That slowed her down for about 2 seconds. Then she switched tactics. "She hasn't stopped crying," she said. "She keeps saying you blocked her like she meant nothing." "No," I said. "I blocked her after she made it clear what I meant to her." That landed. Not enough to stop the performance, but enough to make her blink. Then she asked if Brooke could come by for the rest of her things. I told her Tuesday evening, while I was home. She gave me that long, theatrical eye roll people use when they want to act like boundaries are petty, then turned and left. Tuesday came. Brooke showed up with Cassidy. No apology. No attempt to soften anything. Just that rigid, refrigerated silence people use when they want to look like the wounded one without having to admit any fault. She packed 2 more bags, walked through my place like she was above all of it, then stopped by the bookshelf and grabbed the framed engagement photo. On her way out, she looked at me and said, "I hope this makes you feel powerful." I said, "No, it makes me feel done." That was my original post. I really thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 4 days later, the outreach campaign started. First came one of her friends, Madison, texting me from a number I didn't recognize, talking about compassion, closure, understanding, all the usual words people use when they want access to the person who finally said no. I answered once. I said Brooke got closure the second she told me my family emergency was interfering with her weekend. Then I blocked that number too. After that, one of her coworkers, Tyler, found me on LinkedIn and sent this painfully polished message about grace, stress, and how relationships deserve communication. I replied by sending Brooke's exact sentence back, word for word. He never wrote again. Brooke herself stayed quiet for almost a week. Then she showed up outside my gym at 6:15 in the morning. She was leaning against her car like she'd been waiting a while, wearing my old navy hoodie and a face full of regret arranged carefully enough to look accidental. I stopped a good 10 feet away and said, "Brooke, no." She said she only needed 5 minutes. I said I wasn't giving her 5 seconds. Then the tears came right on cue. She told me she'd been sleeping on Cassidy's couch. Told me work was collapsing. Told me I had left her in the exact season when she needed me most. Then she reached for my arm like contact would force softness back into the conversation. I stepped away before she touched me. That's when her voice changed. The tears didn't disappear, but something sharper slid underneath them. "You are really doing all of this over one sentence?" I said. said, "No, I'm doing it over what that sentence exposed." Then I walked into the gym and left her standing there. That afternoon, she put up one of those vague black and white Instagram stories people use when they want an audience without having to name what they did. Funny how some people disappear when you're drowning. 3 mutuals messaged me. I ignored 2. The third asked whether I had actually thrown her out in the middle of the night with nowhere safe to go. I sent him the camera screenshot showing Cassidy picking her up the night she left. His reply came back fast. Short apology. No follow-up. A week later, I got home and found a grocery bag hanging from the front door handle. Inside was my old concert tee she used to sleep in, the spare garage remote I'd forgotten she still had, and a folded thank you card from our engagement party. Just one line written inside. I was surviving. You were supposed to understand. No apology, no ownership, just blame in neat handwriting. I kept the note. Then, for the first time in weeks, something genuinely good happened. I got promoted to operations lead for our Southeast accounts. Better title, better pay, better trajectory. I took part of the raise and bought new patio furniture with money that had originally been sitting there for wedding expenses. It felt better than I expected, replacing something dead with something solid. Apparently Brooke noticed. The Saturday after the promotion, Cassidy called me from a number I didn't know. Her voice was different this time. Lower, less attitude. She said she needed to tell me something before Brooke did something reckless. Brooke had apparently been telling people I emotionally abandoned her during a mental health crisis. The story had been expanding every time she told it. Now the version making the rounds was that I had thrown her out in the middle of the night with nowhere safe to go. I asked Cassidy why she was suddenly deciding to be honest. She exhaled and said Brooke had tried the same story on their mother, only worse. She claimed I'd refused to help even after some anxiety diagnosis, except there was no diagnosis, no doctor, no paperwork, nothing. Their mother had asked for proof. Brooke didn't have any. 2 hours later, Brooke's mother called me herself. She asked me one question. Did Brooke really tell you to get out of the way over your father's appointment? I said yes. Then I forwarded the text Brooke had sent Cassidy that same night, complaining that I had chosen my dramatic family over her event prep. Her mother read it while I was still on the phone. I could hear the silence stretching on the other end. Then she said very quietly, "I'm sorry." An hour later, Brooke called me 16 times. Blocked numbers, new numbers, even a vendor line. One voicemail accused me of turning her own mother against her. I saved every call, every message. Then, 2 weeks later, it got uglier. By that point, I had started seeing someone casually. Her name was Jenna. I met her through a Saturday run club downtown. She was 29, worked in pediatric occupational therapy, and being around her felt so easy it was almost unsettling. No tension to manage, no emotional landmines, no sense that one wrong sentence would cost me the whole day. That alone told me how distorted my normal had become. I hadn't posted her, hadn't introduced her around, but Columbus is basically one long conversation with traffic lights. So of course Brooke found out. First came flowers at my office, white arrangement, small envelope tucked into the center, for the man who was supposed to be my safe place. No signature. It didn't need one. I photographed everything, then told reception not to accept personal deliveries for me anymore. That night, Brooke sent an email to my work address, and the subject line alone told me she still wasn't close to done. The subject line told me everything before I even opened it. Not an apology, not even an attempt, just accusation dressed up as reflection. You move on fast. The body was worse. Hope she enjoys the version of you I built. I stared at it for a second, then replied once. Clean, direct. Do not contact me at work again. The next morning, security called upstairs. Their tone had that tight, careful edge people use when something is already going sideways. There's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your fiance. She's refusing to leave. I didn't even pause. She's my ex-fiance. Please escort her out. From the glass wall near the elevators, I could see part of the lobby. While they guided her toward the doors, she started crying loud enough to pull attention from half the floor. He's punishing me for having a hard season. I just need closure. No one moved to help her. Security kept walking. That was the moment it stopped feeling like leftover drama and started looking like a pattern. That afternoon, HR reached out and asked if I wanted to formally document unwanted contact. That phrasing flipped a switch. Documentation meant structure. Structure meant accountability, so I built it. Screenshots, voicemails, door camera clips, the flower card, the email to my work account, the gym parking lot encounter, every date, every time. A timeline so dry it couldn't be argued with. My friend Caleb from compliance helped me organize it into a folder that read like a report instead of a story. No emotion, just sequence. 3 nights later, Brooke crossed the line she couldn't walk back. Jenna and I were at a small Italian place in Green Hills. Nothing fancy. Quiet enough to talk without raising your voice. Halfway through dinner, Jenna glanced toward the entrance, her expression shifting just slightly. I think someone's watching us. I didn't have to turn to know, but I did. Brooke was standing near the door, wearing the cream sweater I'd bought her on a weekend trip months ago. The one she said she loved because it felt safe. She walked straight toward our table like she had every right to be there. Jenna leaned back, calm, no panic, just space. Brooke stopped beside the table and looked at me. So this is what surviving looks like for you? I didn't raise my voice. Brooke, leave. She ignored me, turned to Jenna instead. Did he tell you he abandons people when they're struggling? Jenna didn't flinch. I think you need to go. That's when Brooke grabbed the water glass and dumped it into Jenna's lap. Everything snapped into motion. Chairs scraped. I was already standing. Jenna pushed back hard enough to hit the wall behind her. A server shouted for a manager. Brooke's expression shifted instantly, anger folding into tears the second other people started looking. I just wanted to talk, she kept saying. I just wanted to talk. The manager called the police. By the time officers arrived, I already had my phone out. Emails, missed calls, the lobby incident, the gym footage. Jenna gave her statement, steady, precise. The restaurant had cameras. There was no ambiguity left to argue. Brooke was issued a criminal trespass warning and told not to contact me again. One of the officers scrolled through the file on my phone, then looked up at me and said, "File for a protective order first thing Monday." So I did. Monday morning, I took a half day, went downtown, and filed for a 1-year no contact order. No hesitation, no second guessing. That night, another voicemail came in from a new number. "I was drowning," she said, "and you left me to die." I saved it, because no, I didn't leave her to die. I left her without an audience for behavior she refused to own. Court was 3 weeks later. Brooke showed up in a beige dress, hair pulled back, makeup soft enough to signal innocence without saying it out loud, like she'd rehearsed the part. Her attorney tried the obvious angle: miscommunication, stress, emotions running high after a broken engagement. My attorney barely needed to speak. The evidence carried everything. The judge read the work email, listened to the voicemail, reviewed the restaurant report, watched the gym footage where Brooke used her car to block my path. Then she looked directly at Brooke and asked one question. "If he was so unsafe, why did you continue pursuing contact after he clearly ended the relationship?" Brooke cried, said she was trying to fix things, said she spiraled, said she'd been in survival mode, and I had been her anchor. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. Other people are not life rafts you're entitled to climb onto after you set them on fire. Order granted. 1 year. No calls, no texts, no third-party contact. 500 feet from me, my home, and my workplace. Outside the courthouse, Brooke tried one last move. Soft voice. My name, like it was supposed to pull me back into something I'd already left. Her attorney grabbed her arm before she made it 2 steps. About a month later, she lost her job. I don't know if it was the absences, the lobby stunt, or one of her meltdown emails going to the wrong client. I only heard because Cassidy called again, this time to apologize. "I kept thinking she was just under pressure," she said, "but she always has a pressure story." Exactly. Jenna and I kept seeing each other, slowly, normally, no spikes, no performance. My dad's doing better too. Cardiac rehab 3 times a week, complaining about the music, flirting with the nurses, which means he's basically himself again. The strangest part is how quiet life feels when you stop volunteering to be misunderstood. For months, I thought being supportive meant translating disrespect into stress, turning selfishness into something softer so it didn't look like what it was. I thought love meant absorbing impact because the other person was having a hard time. It doesn't. Stress doesn't excuse character, it reveals it. Brooke loved calling it survival mode because it made her sound fragile and heroic at the same time. But the truth was simpler. She wasn't trying to survive. She was trying to justify burning everything around her and calling it necessary, as if every mess she made was supposed to count as evidence that her pain mattered more than the damage. That was the trick underneath all of it. She treated the fallout like a receipt. If people got hurt, if plans got wrecked, if trust got ground down, that only proved how overwhelmed she was, as if destruction itself made her blameless. But surviving something is not the same as using other people up. Survival is making it through a hard season without converting the person beside you into a tool. It is not asking for loyalty you would never return. It is not demanding patience while offering none. It is not hearing that your partner's father is having a heart scare and deciding your seating chart, your vendor bins, your Sunday prep somehow outrank that. It is not calling selfishness desperation just because the word sounds softer. Once I was out of it, the whole thing looked almost embarrassingly clear. Brooke never really wanted a partner, not in the full sense, not in the mutual sense. She wanted a system she could lean on without limit. She wanted built-in resources, a house already running, a wallet she could reach into indirectly, a driver when life got inconvenient, a buffer between her and consequences, a steady pair of hands to absorb whatever panic, failure, or pressure came crashing through next. She wanted someone dependable enough to stay still while everything in her life got rearranged around her needs. And as long as I stayed in that position, she called it love. The second I stepped out of it, she spiraled. Not because she had lost some deep, irreplaceable bond. Not because she suddenly understood my value and couldn't bear the grief of it. She panicked because the structure she thought she had access to was gone. The support she assumed she could manage, guilt, and retrieve on demand stopped answering. What she lost was control. What she lost was convenience with feelings attached. That's why I don't feel guilty. I did not walk away from someone helpless and in danger. I stopped cushioning someone who had learned to turn every hardship into leverage. There is a difference, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The quiet after that kind of relationship is strange at first. Then it becomes everything. My house feels different now, lighter, like the air changed. My phone doesn't feel like a threat sitting face down on the table. My weekends are mine again. No stacks of bridal magazines on the counter. No frantic supply runs because somebody else's poor planning suddenly became my emergency. No lectures about how I was cruel, cold, or selfish for caring about my own parents. No bending myself into something smaller just to avoid setting off another reaction. Just peace. Actual peace. The kind that doesn't need to be negotiated. The kind that doesn't come with a price tag attached. The kind that makes you realize how exhausted you were long before you admitted it. And maybe that's the ugliest part of people like Brooke. They make your exhaustion feel like proof you haven't loved them enough. They keep moving the line. Keep reframing the damage. Keep teaching you to mistrust your own read on what's happening until basic respect starts to feel like a luxury. It isn't. If you've ever dealt with someone who treated stress like a hall pass to disrespect you, you probably know exactly what I mean. The details are always different, but the pattern feels the same. The excuse changes, the pressure changes, the crisis changes, but somehow the outcome never does. They need, you absorb, they justify, you shrink, until one day you stop, and that's when they finally call it cruelty. So if this sounds familiar, I'd actually want to hear it. What happened in your case? Do you think I was right to end it when I did? Or would you have stayed longer than I did?